Welcome to this week's episode of Mr. Wizard's Workshop. It's episode number 23. So the focus this week is everything matters equally, or does everything matter equally? And I'll go ahead and give you the answer up front. No, it does. So equality and justice and human rights is a noble ideal, and all God's creatures should be treated fairly. But in the world of achievement, everything matters equally is a lie. In fact, it is one of the 6 big lies from the book, The One Thing. So in last week's episode, multitasking is a lie, another one of the 6 big lies. I exploded the myth of multitask. I'll post the link to last week's episode in the description for this week's episode. And this week, I'm going to explain why the mistaken belief that everything matters equally is an achievement killer and give you a better mental model to replace that belief. And I've sprinkled several quotes through the presentation because I really like quotes. So things that matter most must never be at the mercy of things that matter least. Johann Wolfgang von Goethe. Bob Hawke, former Prime Minister of Australia. Things which are most important don't always scream the loudest. Stephen Covey. Most of us spend too much time on what is urgent and not enough time on what is important. Bruce Lee. It's not a daily increase, but a daily decrease. Hack away at the inessential. Peter Drucker, do first things first, second things, not at all. A couple of quotes from Gary Keller, who's one of the authors of the book, The One Thing. Don't focus on being busy, focus on being productive. Allow what matters most to drive your day. Doing the most important thing is always the most important thing. Another one from Peter Drucker. Efficiency is doing things right. Effectiveness is doing the right things. A little bit of housekeeping. Live attendees are on mute. Drop any questions or comments you might have along the way into the Q&A. And at the end of the presentation, I'll check the Q&A and then open the floor up for questions and discussion. So let's dive a little bit more to why everything matters equally is false. I don't think that particular big lie is as widely promoted and ingrained in the public consciousness as multitasking is a good thing lie. But I think many people act unconsciously as if they believe it to be true. So as adults, our actions and choices are discretionary. The actions we take and where we focus our time, energy, and attention is up to us. So this is even more true for entrepreneurs. You are the boss of you. So the all-important question is, how do we make good choices? I think many people lack a clear formula for making those decisions. They are reactive and fall back on familiar and often haphazard approaches, which actually undermine their success. Think of it as kind of human pinballing through the day. So when you do that, what happens is the best decisions get traded for any decision. We're active and busy, but this doesn't move us any closer to success. Activity can be completely unrelated to productivity, and being busy isn't a measure of accomplishment. And I found, interestingly, a quote from Socrates: beware the barrenness of a busy life. This is a pretty long quote from Thomas Edison, but I liked it. So being busy does not always mean real work. The object of all work is production or accomplishment. And to either of these ends, there must be forethought, system, planning, intelligence, and honest purpose, as well as perspiration. So seeming to do is not doing. Henry David Thoreau, it's not enough to be busy, so are the ants. The question is, what are we busy about? What to do if you are currently kind of hung up in the big lie. First, get your head around the idea that success is not a game that's won by whoever does the most. Not everything matters equally for your success. High achievers always work from a sense of priority. How do you apply that priority? Start with making the Pareto principle of the vital few and the trivial many, aka the 80-20 rule, a guiding success principle for yourself. I mentioned it and discussed it in some other workshops, but I want to revisit it here. So the principle states that the majority of what you want will come from the minority of what you do. Another way to say that is that a small number of causes, actions, creates most of the outcomes, the results that you want. So there's literally hundreds of infographics out there on the Pareto principle, but I picked 2 that I thought visually remind and illustrate. One on the right, very simple. 20% is important. Focus on that. And then this one on the left gives you a little bit better feel for how you can whack off the orange section altogether, because that 80% of that effort only gets you 20% of the results. What to do after that? Go extreme. What is extreme Pareto? Start with the hopefully short list of your 20% task, the things you've identified that will move the needle the most for your business, and pare that list down to the one item that is absolutely most essential to your success. To quote Gary Keller again, keep going. You can actually take 20% of the 20% of the 20% and continue to get down to that single one most important thing. No matter what your task, mission, or goal is, big or small, you can start with as large a list as you want, but you need to develop the mindset that you will whittle your way from there to the critical few and then not stop until you end with the essential one, the imperative one, the one thing. The folks in question from the One Thing book is actually extremely useful for helping you, especially get started on that. And the question is, what's the one thing I can do such that by doing it, everything else will be easier or unnecessary? So I did a whole episode recently about the folks in question, how to use it effectively. I'll post a link to that video in the description of this video. And to quote Gary Keller a final time, sometimes it's the first thing you do, sometimes it's the only thing you do in a day. Regardless, doing the most important thing is always the most important thing. So for me, my very first daily business ritual is each morning is to review my daily calendar and my success list, which is more focused than a to-do list. Tweak it if necessary. Make sure my daily calendar is correctly time blocked to reflect my priority work for the day, the one thing. And by the way, if you're currently not time blocking your daily calendar each day, please start. It takes me at most 10 minutes. And I ensure that my one thing task are scheduled first. And I ensure that at least 50% of my total daily work time is allocated to that work. And if I get my one thing task done, then I have had a successful work day, even if I didn't get any other work done. And if I get a lot of other shit done, but I don't get the one thing done, I've had an unsuccessful day. So your action item for this week is at the beginning of your next work day, potentially tomorrow morning for you, review your to-do list and then apply the Pareto principle and focus on narrowing it down to the 20% of items that you need to get done. Then go extreme, keep applying the Pareto principle to narrow it down 20% of the time until you reach your one thing for the day. And then get that done before anything else, even if it's the only thing you do all day. A few brief announcements. If you found this video useful, you know what to do. And if you know someone who would enjoy or benefit from this video, please send them a link. If you have any questions, post them. I'll always respond to posts. In the description of this week's recording, I'll post the links to last week's workshop episode, Multitasking is a Lie, previous workshop episode, The One Thing Question, and I'll post a link to register for this live workshop. So if you're not already registered for this free weekly workshop every Sunday, you want to learn how to up your productivity in weekly bite-sized chunks, you're invited to register. So each week I feature instantly actionable steps you can take to double your productivity, overcome procrastination, and get your shit done. So to register, just hit the link in the description of this week's recording. And I'll now stop sharing and open up the floor for questions and discussion. Hey, Mars, I'm sure you are already familiar with the Pareto principle, or I assume you were.
Yes, with the principle itself, yes, but to go to the 20% of the 20% and then even one level further down.
Yeah.
I've only heard about that this year, actually, for the first time, which was, he had a video where he talked about how the more successful you become as an entrepreneur, the less you do in quote unquote, like the things you do become more and more abstract and strategic.
Yes.
And, as his company was growing, he had to do much more thinking and much less doing, which is a difficult transition to do.
Yep.
When when you come from the trenches and you grow your own business and you're very efficient, you get things done, and then you have to hand that over to specialists and you transition to more and more thinking. And he talked about that as well, that it's so important to, as the leader of a company or a founder or whatever, to identify the 20% of the 20% of the 20%. I guess it's one of those things where if you're not experiencing it yourself, if you're not on that level, you think you understand it until you have to do it. But I find it fascinating as a concept.
I mean, I think it's critical when you reach that stage in your business that he was describing, where you need to start outsourcing and kind of shifting to being much more strategic and less hands-on doing stuff. But even before you get to that point, I think the one thing still serves you the best. So, for example, I'm not at the point in my business where I'm doing a whole lot of outsourcing. For example, my one big thing, as you know, right now is the content development, primarily the YouTube videos, including this workshop, the short. So I'm doing all that myself, but it is my one thing, and that's where I focus at least 50% of my work time every day on. But as I grow, there'll come a time when maybe I'm not doing all of that work myself. I think I'll always be recording the videos, or most of them, but I'll probably be handing off potentially some of the editing, production work to somebody else, and allocating. And my one thing at that time will be some flavor of everyday strategic planning and a certain amount of oversight for the work that I've handed off.
Yeah, and also, to your point, what is the one thing? It might be different for everyone.
Oh yeah, it is.
He might have identified his one thing at this stage, to be a strategic thinker in his business, but someone else might have a different one thing, and it might change, or probably will change over time as well.
It absolutely will change over time. The one thing now is not going to be your one thing, the same one thing forever, because you're having success. The key point you made, which is, yes, the one thing at a given point in time can be very different for different people, and it is going to change over time for the same person. That's why you need to keep that foremost in your mind, and keep going back at least periodically to the focusing question.
That's why a coach is very helpful, right?
Absolutely.
to not get sidetracked. As always, you put the finger on the big pain points, and productivity, I think it's something where